Guys, do we have to talk about this? We can always turn back. So we got the conversation going on about Koyanskaya. How do you guys feel about Koyanskaya after everything that's been revealed and how she was handled in the story? By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you guys sign up for the Patreon. You get access to early content and priority on your request. Now I want to start this off by saying I have no personal malice against Koyanskaya myself, and also these responses have been great. These people are so pissed off. But I can't say that I blame them. As much as I love to see people mauled over the direction they decided to take with her, I can't say that their feelings are unwarranted. You know, the whole her being built up to be a Tamamo and then she's actually not a Tamamo, her being built up to be a full beast, one of the strongest beasts on the roster, and then she never gets past premature, her being built up to be a disciple and having no relations with the alien god whatsoever, other than the pack for them to mind their own business. And a lot of the reasons why I'm seeing both sides of the spectrum is because there's a lot of people that got into these characters in a different way. So on one side, you got the people that were the original fans of Tamamo in general, that already read Fate Extra prior, and they're familiar with the Tamamo 9, so they're expecting for Type Moon to finally build upon that. You know, what's the point of creating it if you're not going to explore it and actually give us at least something for the foundation that you put out? And then there's the other side of the fans where it's like they started on FGO. So for a lot of people, Koyanskaya was their first introduction to what should have been an actual Tamamo. Like they have no real relationship with that character, so they don't even care about her fulfilling that role because it's their first time meeting her. They're just looking at her like she's a funny antagonist. She comes in, she stirs things up, she keeps it interesting. So this is one of the few times where, while it may seem like one side is being irrational, you really could see it from both perspectives. As far as what I feel like they did myself, it does seem like a huge fumble. I can't look at this and say that this was a good idea. And you guys got to understand, and I've said it plenty of times before, I love a good plot twist. I love writing that's rooted in plot twists. It just keeps the story super engaging for me. But if you're gonna plot twist something that's been built up for so long just for it to go into nothing, then what was the actual point? It's like, how many plot twists do you have to have until all the twists have no actual value? Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. So she's not Tamamo, she didn't become the full beast, she's not Daiji, so she's not the fake Tamamo either, but then she also has a connection to Amaterasu, which is where a lot of this came from. And then on top of that, she's this nature spirit made from the Tunguska event. All of these different things. It just feels like they tried to do too much with her, and the concept of the character just went into overload. It's almost like going through the entirety of Fate Extra CCC with the Sakura 5, and then the story telling us, well, actually, this isn't based on Sakura. These were actually Saber Faces, or something to that effect. Just something that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This coupled with the fact that whenever she is a part of the story, she somehow goes from completely vulnerable to conceptually manipulating anything that she wants in a matter of minutes. It's actually hilarious. And it really is a shame because at the same time, I also valued a lot of things that she did up until this point, as far as being that curveball in the story at times. You know, the revelations that she had in LB5, her manipulating characters like Murian, just to show that inner nature of how people really are when you finally give them some leverage. And I see a lot of people talking about this and that on what she did for her entertainment. That's another thing that I liked about her. She wasn't there to be permissible. She wasn't there to be your friend. Everybody wants a character to be your friend. It's the same issue that Ritsuka has, and we're gonna get into that too. But Koyan didn't give a fuck. a great portion of the time. It wasn't until Tunguska where this kind of hit a U-turn. It reminds me a lot of Kirei and why a lot of people like him, myself included. He wasn't there to be your friend. He was there to be him. But he was never convoluted in his background. It was never complex to the point where it threw you for the loop. Koyanskaya's concept comes in and she's trying to do all these different things at one time and you end up with nothing. You got Taigon coming in with the usual, I'm not strong enough to be at my best, but I'm also a grand candidate. But my powers also don't work as good as I thought they would. But I'm also good enough to yeet her into space when it's all said and done. Just for her to turn around and come back into the story anyway, because they always do. It's hard to take serious at this point. And again, that is a shame because that just goes into a lot of things that the community talks about and we've discussed lately. One of the big issues that a lot of people talk about is Type Moon starting concepts and then not carrying through. We've only had a few Tamamos up until this point. Koyanskaya would have been the most impressive one, really, even more than Tamamo herself, because by law of the story, a lot of what she did was through the help of the narrative. But Koyanskaya was the beast that was built up on her own, had the magical energy to manifest herself, could jump lost belts at will, could manifest all these weapons and creatures at will, even outside of her own reality marble. It is a mess. And we haven't even gotten to the fact that the quote-unquote concept that she's supposed to be copying, the root of Tamamo's character, Amaterasu, one of the strongest evils in the verse. And per usual, we are going to get into the comments. I'm convinced the reason Koyanskaya came to Chaldea early is for players to figure out how terribly wrong Taigon's assumption is. I think a lot of the issue with Taigon is that he brought a lot of bad news, for one. Two, as I mentioned, he's supposed to be impressive and then he's kind of not. He's just trolling again. And then you have this somewhat forced relationship between her, even though he's not supposed to have that association with her at all. But you know, fate loves to force relationships all the time, and that's been apparent for a while. But it just seems like, knowing that love is the root of the reason why we fight for things in the world to begin with, they like to lean on that a lot within the characters in a very unrealistic way. It gets to the point where everybody loves everybody. Why even have enemies? You know, things like this worked with Goetia, because you know we just did a video on him. A part of the reason why Goetia was such a good character is because, again, just like Kirei, he was not here to be your friend. That humanity was taken out of him and he was fighting for what he thought was right, which didn't align with humanity's perspective at all. But it felt good anyway because, well, he's not human in the first place. I'm not expecting him to feel this way. And it was for a good cause. And I've seen a lot of actual humans try to do the exact same plan as him and fail miserably. Here's another one. It's such a shame that Koyanskaya felt 10 times more threatening in the Lost Belts than in her own event. And you know, I think about the way that she was and how powerful she was before she even got to her second state, and just the raise in general shows how strong she was supposed to be, and she wasn't even all the way to her goal. She still wanted to get 9 tails. That's another thing that is pretty much confirmed now that we're never going to see or even get close to. I'm finding a hard time believing that once they bring in the real Daji or the real Tamamovich, that they're gonna revisit this concept. Because one, well, you already pulled the rug from underneath us the first time, and then two, they look at these reactions. People may think that Type Moon don't pay attention because they don't get what they want. They look at the responses, and you can tell just by the nature of the references that they make in the game. I'm trying to figure out who would even want to touch Tamamo in this way unless it's Nasu himself at this point. Remember, Sakurai wrote this event. Nasu just outlined and okayed it, but everybody's gonna look at him because he's the overseer. He would have to be held accountable for that also, because you saw this, you knew what it was, and you still gave the green light on it. And I thought about this too, looking at it from his perspective. The only thing that I could say in his defense is that Nasu doesn't seem selfish enough to think that he's the only good writer, but a lot of his audience does. A lot of people really aren't interested if he isn't the one writing it. And you can just tell by the nature of the responses. And I'm thinking he's seeing it as, I'm gonna outline this idea and pitch it off to my people and let their vision be their own thing and just hope that it does well. It's not like Sakurai went into this wanting Koyanskaya to be written in a bad way. It's just she had her vision, Nasu had his, and there's just too many things going on. One thing that really annoys me about Tunguska is that Guda seems to not give a single shit about Koyanskaya. She is the one villain that Guda should have a proper relationship and rapport with. They should be conflicted about having to be her, but instead there's just nothing, as there shouldn't be. There has been nothing up until this point in Koyanskaya's character to say I should care about this villain. Literally everything that she does is in her own self-interest. In fact, I have to applaud the main character for actually going against their nature for once to not be so lenient. I mean, if you're willing to blow up entire lost belts with full societies, but you're not willing to go against an actual villain, then something is wrong. And you know, it's funny because by the end of the event, they still have to circle back around and find a way to make sense of the whole evil of humanity thing. It's like, oh yeah, she is supposed to love people. Well, she did love people, it was just in an inadvertent way. The end. It's like, huh? What makes it even more convoluted is that you have all these creatures that she's supposed to be comprised of that could have been the reason that she had love for humanity, but they're supposed to have hatred for us also. The only real saving grace is her being a nature spirit, and usually nature spirits are protectors. So by that logic, as a beast of cherishment, she could have had that protector element at her core. It just would have resided behind all of her malice because, well, as an animal, you don't think like a human. You think primal. You're going off instincts. So you don't care about logic and rationale as far as anybody else goes. You just want to survive. The exact same way her marble was set up. I could go for that. But they never said these things. This is just being considerate. Here's another one. The fact that Koyanskaya has no connection at all whatsoever to Daji has got to be one of the stupidest story decisions I've ever seen. Yeah, like I said earlier, man, I've never seen anything like this. I've seen people build up a character to shoot themselves in the foot in terms of writing, but this was like they built her character up and shot themselves with a bazooka. I'm like, damn, she's gonna go out like this? Damn. And you know what's also wild? Tamamo Arya is one of the newest Tamamo 9, and they're saying that she also didn't really do anything. So the Tamamo 9, something that's been set in works for years, is starting to shape up really badly. Other than Tamamo herself, they have said it like 1,000 times now that Koyanskaya is not Daji or Tamamo. If they say it again, I'm just gonna skip it because of this trash writing. Like, y'all don't know how funny these comments are. These dudes are going insane. But she really was going for at least what I thought was a good character. May have not been the character that people wanted, but definitely one that the story needed up until the point that they did that. Now it seems as if everybody is saying, get this bitch off my screen. Do you know how impressive it was for her to create that reality marble just for nothing to happen? I really like her design in both states, especially the second form as a premature beast. Yes, I'm talking about the one where she's got the arms and the legs sticking out, because you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of the authors that write out these weird alien-like character designs. What you think a homunculus would look like from a different series and not Fate. And it's supposed to look gross and unsightly. And she pulled that off, especially when her power is supposed to be coming from all these different things. I'm really confused about why people were so discontent about Tunguska's Koyanskaya story. I really can't wrap my head around it. Like how it was about another character, or did it hurt her own character somehow? I think the biggest issue is that people have been led on for a really long time, at least from the start of the Lost Belt. I'll never forget when the prologue first started, and I vividly remember her kicking foe, and I actually got mad, like genuinely. I'm like, you get your feet off him, you funky bitch. And it seemed like every lost belt, they just took it up another level. Every lost belt, she just did something else just to be despicable, just to serve as that plot point on top of everything else that's already going on. She wasn't even the main squeeze. And then you finally get to her story and it's like, okay, all that build up, it's been several years, let's see it. Then we beat her in one chapter with a team that's supposed to be nerfed while she's supposed to be spiraling into one of her greatest points inside of her own territory. I mean, this is the same person that even the alien god didn't want to deal with, still managed to yeet her like it was nothing. I don't see how you can't see why people are mad. It's a shame they don't really do a good job of explaining exactly why she would take on Tamamo's appearance. Like, I get what they were going for in the fact that she wanted to model herself on something that had some form of kinship, but with that logic, she could have taken on any other monster type appearances like the Echidna or heck, even Tiamat. The connection is weak is what I'm saying. Yeah, with all the things that she had going for her character, she would have been better as some type of a doppelganging shapeshifter where she just changes forms every chapter and we don't know that it's her until we know. Kinda have mixed feelings about her. I miss when she was an amoral bastard that just did whatever she felt like and followed her own selfish goals instead of another tragic villain with the backstory similar to Jack. Also, I felt like Tunguska was really rushed and didn't do well enough to redeem her in my eyes. Still, I can't bring myself to hate her though. Yeah, I don't hate her at all. It's more the circumstance that she was put in. And again, going into that tragic villain aspect, you can't do that for everybody. And you shouldn't. Just going into another beast, the same as Goetia, that's the same reason that made Kiara so good. Is because she irredeemably was out for her own good. All I can say is we gotta spend more time following through. Stop making strong characters just to make them weak anyway. I'm one of the best characters in the verse. By the way, I also forgot how to do anything that would prove that. This is wild.